Hello, everybody. Welcome to the latest edition of Catching Up with Carl. I'm Carl Bauer. Recently, I had the pleasure of speaking with some very, very fine athletes from the area. The first interview features one of the smaller school districts in the SECV8 coverage area, a district, in fact, that no longer exists, West Snyder. Now, when the Midwest School District came together, Midwest was Middleburg, that's the mid part, and West Snyder, that's the west part, Midwest. Well, West Snyder in the 60s had some exceptional wrestlers. I'm talking about the Hess brothers, they were state champions, and another wrestler who was not a state champion, but he was a teammate of the Hesses, and he made a tremendous mark for himself and from the area at University of Maryland. His story is compelling, and you're going to enjoy that. In the second interview, the emphasis is on Milton High School, which has had families of athletes who left their marks in the Black Panthers record books. I'm talking about the Fanics, Tony, his son, Anthony, in boys basketball, the Durs, Jimmy and Jerry, in wrestling, the Greenleys, Bob, Steve, and their father, Gerald, in wrestling, and the Pawlings. That is a great family name in Milton history. Ryan, Justin, and Trish. We're going to be listening to what Trish Pawling has to say. She's now Trish Pawling King. Her interview is a very good one as well. I think you're going to enjoy what Gobel, Kline, and Trish Pawling King have to say in this latest installment of Catching Up with Carl here on SECV8. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the latest version of Catching Up with Carl here on SECV8. You know, when you have your dream destroyed, it's really hard to recoup and come back and make things happen for yourself. Well, you're going to hear a story today that will just really give you a lot of faith in the human spirit. Talking with Gobel Kline, who is a West Snyder wrestler, a great wrestler from West Snyder. When I was a kid wrestling for Warrior Run, people talked about this tough kid from West Snyder, and that's Gobel Kline. Gobel, thank you very much for joining us.
Pleasure to be here.
All right, I have a couple questions for you.
West
Snyder is no longer a school district. You were the West Snyder, what? What was your mascot?
Mounties. The West Snyder Mounties.
Okay.
You Mounties?
Eventually combined then to form Midwest, and now it's the Midwest Mustangs. Do you remember the year that happened?
2000 and call it 4, approximately.
Okay. All right. I knew it was fairly recent. I've been to West Snyder a couple of times. We go sometimes to the playing field, at least we used to do some soccer matches. So I know where West Snyder is. I'm, of course, from Warrior Run. You had some very good counterparts when you were wrestling. Let's talk about first Alan Goss, 120-pound state champion in 1964. What do you remember about Alan?
Excellent athlete. He managed to win the states without what you might call formal training. Alan Goss could do a tight waist and a arm roll, and he won the states with excellent strength, good balance, fine wrestler.
He was followed then by Cloyd Hess in 1965, a 95-pound state champion. What do you remember about him?
Cloyd Hess went to the States. He went to States. It was his brother Kenny that won the States.
They were brothers, you said?
Yes, the Hess brothers were brothers. And what I remember about both of them, Cloyd was an excellent mat wrestler, and Kenny Hess could do a fireman's carry and a barrel roll.
Remember those moves very well.
If it's 50 years ago.
And you graduated in what year?
High school in 65 and University of Maryland in January of 70. Took me an extra 6 months.
Things were a little bit different when you were wrestling in high school. You didn't have advancement unless you won. And that really was a problem for you at regionals. Tell us about that experience.
If you lost, you were out. It's that simple. As a junior in high school, I lost a match in the finals of regionals, but I had won the districts my junior year.
And it's something that you don't forget about when you're that close, and because you don't win that one match, you don't advance. That's hard to deal with.
Amen. That's the way it was. No second chances.
No
now
second chance.
They take 16 wrestlers to the state tournament.
It's a lot
and
different.
Back in the day, they only took 4.
Yeah. Yeah. So you went on then to the University of Maryland, and you had a teammate. In fact, you and I share a teammate, George Cronrath from Warrior Run, 1964 state champion, 145 pounds. What do you remember about George?
I remember when I was a sophomore in high school, George Conrath beat me at the districts. I did not wrestle George again until we went to the University of Maryland. As freshmen, we were very close, and George transferred from Maryland to, I think, Lock Haven.
That is correct.
Dropped out of college.
And you, of course, stayed at the University
wrestler.
of Maryland, and you really had an historic event. National champion at 152 pounds. What a great accomplishment.
By the grace of God and a little blood, sweat, and tears, I won.
Now, how did you advance to the national tournament in the college ranks?
You had to win the conference. You had to win your conference to go to the nationals. I must admit, back in the day, the Atlantic Coast Conference was not real strong in wrestling. So practically everyone that made the University of Maryland wrestling team won their conference. ACC was just not real strong in wrestling in the mid 60s, late 60s. So win the conference, you went to nationals.
And that's how you did it. And I read somewhere that you were ranked number 2 going in, and you won the tournament. That's amazing.
My senior year, yes. My junior year, I was 4th in the nation. I lost a referee's decision in the semifinals and took a 4th that year. And my senior year, I won.
Now, were there 10 weight classes in those days? I don't recall.
Yes, sir. 10 weight classes.
But
they are constantly changing the weight classes, but there were still 10, just like now.
Yeah, I know today there is no 152, which is where you won. There is instead 149 and 157. I imagine you would have gone at 149 if you were to wrestle today.
Yes, I would have. Yes. My junior and senior year, I only had to lose 5 or 6 pounds to make weight.
And that certainly was a help. I know since you, remembering what I do about you being as tough as you were, you really didn't have to lose a lot of weight. You could handle the guys at your own natural weight.
Yeah, we can say that now, but it didn't feel like it then.
I'm sure.
The old cliches are true when it comes to wrestling. You cannot learn to wrestle in a steam room.
That's very good. That's a good thing to remember. So after you graduated from college, what then? What have you done with your life's work?
Well, by the grace of God, my wife and I own a pleasant home. I made a living. I worked in civil service. I sold automobiles. I went back to civil service. I even taught driver's ed for a year and a half and retired at the tender age of 63. So I worked in civil service. I sold automobiles.
And now you're back basically at home.
Amen. Amen.
What present day projects do you have going on right now?
A project. My wife and I own 60 acres of farmland and a home, and that keeps us pretty busy.
I'm sure it does.
In other words, work on the farm. By the grace of God, we're able to own a few acres of farmland, and that's my project.
That's great. That's great.
Keeping the farm up.
Well, Gobel, I want to thank you for being here on Catching Up with Carl. It's been a pleasure talking to you, and I congratulate you. I know it's late. Your national championship was a long time ago, but to do what you did as a wrestler is just amazing. I compliment you on that a lot.
Carl, could I use this opportunity to set one wrestling stat straight? There was a wrestler by the name of Bob Ferraro. He was a very good wrestler. He went to Indiana, and I wrestled him in the semifinals, and I was fortunate enough to win. The next year, he was runner-up. 20 years later, my son, Brandon Kline, who took a fourth in the state, wrestled his son, Bob Ferraro Jr. The Sunbury Daily Item said that Bob Ferraro Jr. won that match, and that's not true. My son, Brandon, won the match. I'd just like to take this opportunity to set something straight from 25 years ago.
That's very good to know. The Ferraros were together as father and son, coach and wrestler at Bucknell for a number of years.
Amen. Yes, they did.
Again, thank you very much, Gobel. I appreciate your time here on Catching Up with Carl on SECV8. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the latest edition of Catching Up with Carl here on SECV8. Today, I'm talking with Trish Pawling King, a 1994 graduate of Milton High School, and you're going to enjoy her story. Trish, thank you very much for joining us today.
Oh, thanks for having me, Carl.
I really appreciate your taking the time out of your day.
Sure.
First, let's talk about your high school experience, the greatest love of your life, at that time anyway, high school basketball. Tell us about that. You were a four-year starter, a four-year star for Milton. What was it like for you?
Well, you know, it's funny. Right now, my son is in 8th grade, and that's when my mom tells me that that's when it just really started for me. It's when I decided this is what I was going to do. And I really remember it. My day just revolved around it. It's what I did when I woke up. I used to go to the gym. I used to walk there, spend all day, come home for lunch, go back out in the afternoon. And it's just what I wanted to do. I always think back. I can't even remember what I did in the summers. I think I just played basketball, and it's what I loved. And it's all I remember. So it was great. Everything about it was great.
I'm sure on the way back from the gym and on the way there, you were dribbling the ball too.
That's right. I always say if you're going to walk, you might as well be dribbling. Don't waste your steps.
Well, I remember watching you on the court, and it was amazing. You really
Thank you.
Had a real talent, and that you could tell. Everybody who watched you could tell you really enjoyed the game.
I did. You know, I used to go out and dribble for hours, and it seems like something that's boring, but I enjoyed it. I think when you love something, boredom never comes into it. You know, you could just do it all day. So if I would have had one of those hoops that kicked the ball back to you, boy, that would have been great. But we didn't have those then. So that's a great invention.
Well, you had two older brothers, I'm sure, who helped you out quite a bit. They were just exceptional athletes at Milton as well. Ryan and Justin, tell us
Yeah.
about them and their reaction to you.
You know, they both helped me, both of them and my dad. My dad, he said, if you want to shoot, I will rebound. And he did. He did for hours and hours. And Ryan, I remember in the summer, he used to play me one-on-one if I wanted to play. He would go out and do it. And it was great because I had two different type of brothers. You know, Ryan was smaller. And so he would get real up on me and you know, pressure me. And then Justin, we have a great memory. I know when I was training after college, Justin and I would play, and there was times I couldn't even score. His defense was just so stifling, and he was 5'10", so he was bigger. But all of that is so helpful because if you can score against a 5'10" defender who's a man and is so quick and so talented, or you know, a smaller, quicker one that gets up in your face than against a woman, it's all that much easier. So I credit them so much, and I try to teach my son that it's like it doesn't matter if you score how you do, it's making you better. You know, I say to this day, there was times Justin beat me 10-0, but I got better, you know, so it's just, it taught me a lot playing against them, just having their support and, you know, my dad too, and my mom, everybody contributed in some way to helping me be what I wanted to be. So I appreciate all of them for sure.
Well, I just ran into Justin. His son is now playing soccer for the state champion.
I know.
Green Dragon. He's not playing a lot yet because there's so many good kids ahead of him. But I saw him at a soccer match. He looks very well.
It's amazing. It's funny that his family went in a totally different direction. You know, they are a soccer family first and foremost. They love basketball too, but it's soccer, and it just shows you what our family does, because we never played soccer, but Justin became a total student of the game. Learned everything he could about soccer to teach his sons, and then hopefully eventually his daughter also, if she wants to play. So they're talented, and whenever I come home, I watch everything I can because it's different. I like to learn too, you know. So if you're going to play something and be great at it, then I want to know what you're doing, you know, and how well you're doing it. But it really does translate a lot to basketball. He'll tell me, oh, that was a great pass. He really saw the field, you know, and we talk about this a lot. His kids, and even Canyon, my son, there's some innate sense of being able to pass the ball. All of them, all of his sons, my son, I didn't know that could be genetic, but it seems like it is. It really does.
Well, there's no better place than Lewisburg, Pennsylvania to learn how to play soccer. They are just exceptional. And
they're blessed to be there, that's for sure.
They're fortunate to be there.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. You also played softball, I believe, for Milton.
I did. I don't have as much memories of that. I have more memories of playing for my dad. You know, we were the first girls league, the 13 to 15 in the area when they started that. So that's a lot more of my memory. When I got into high school, I still loved softball, but I always wanted to be practicing basketball. So it just kind of took over, you know, and I think I played until my junior year. And I do remember you had mentioned me being a catcher. I remember Schroeder, she said, if you don't catch, I'm not pitching. I said, okay, well then I'll catch. So, but my dad was a catcher. So I think it sort of comes naturally. And I did love it. It's just basketball ended up trumping everything. So.
Well, being the great athlete that you are, it certainly fell into line that you would be able to pitch and catch. And that position is perfect for you.
Yeah, it was fun. You know, it was a strange transition because I played baseball up until 12, and then they started the softball league, and you know, now you're pitching a whole different way. And I have a great memory. My Uncle Mike, who was a phenomenal pitcher, took me to his house and said, you know, let me see if I can try to get you to pitch. And my first pitch went over his house, so it wasn't the best, but you know, our Pawling family, we work. So, you know, I remember I used to have as many walks as strikeouts, but, you know, you do the best you can. So it was just a great experience to play. And, because it's something my dad did and was so talented at. And so I loved watching him play. So I just think it's, it's just something you love because you're around it.
Well, you ended your basketball career with 2,256 career points. There is nobody, no girl at Milton who is going to come close to that.
Yeah, you never know. I don't know. You never know. There's been some amazing people in the area since I left who destroyed that. So, it just depends if you find a girl that this is what she wants to do, so.
You graduated in 1994, and then you went off to college. What college did you go to, by the way?
St. Bonaventure University in Western New York.
And you played basketball there.
I did. It was a different experience for me. It was at times a humbling experience because you think you're going to be the star again. And, everybody is just on a whole different level. The girls covering you aren't 5'4" and 5'5". They're 6 foot tall. And but I think it was a good experience. There was actually times I thought about transferring to go be that star again, because I was used to that. But I think that I learned more life lessons that, taught me more about life than just basketball, because, after those 4 years, basketball was essentially over. So I do appreciate that. I think it gave me time to really mature and say, what, this is now more about team. And I always loved my team, but, I was a big part of my team. And I had to learn, it's just more about the relationships you have with your teammates and the way you make them better, and I think that was a time in my life that I just learned that you just take yourself out of it, and you just say, hey, how do I make my teammates better? And if me doing that makes me play more, then great, so that's just kind of what I had to learn, but I still appreciated it. And it was tougher than high school. High school was real easy, but I think that happens to a lot of people in college.
Well, there was a coach a long time ago at University of Nevada, Las Vegas. His name is Jerry Tarkanian. He had a quote that I love, and that is, reporters were asking him, why do you not pick the little guys who can move? He said, look, little guys who are quick get tired, they slow down.
Yeah.
Big guys who get tired don't get shorter.
Yeah.
Right. Tall guys.
Exactly.
And
exactly.
That certainly is a problem with you going to college, and your maximum height was what, 5'4"?
Is 5'4". I say 5'5" with my shoes on. I don't know if that's true or not. And yeah, it was tough. It was tough. Sometimes there's only so much you can do. And I talk to my son about that a lot. He is going to have the height. I can already see it. And so I've told him, you are going to be given the physical, you've been given the physical attributes. There's only so many things I could control. And to this day, I still think that I could have worked harder, but I still think you can only do so much, and I noticed that for sure. When they would call a clear out for me, getting to the hoop was not the same as it was in high school. That's for sure. There was a lot of clutching, maybe too much clutching, but there was a lot to try to get a shot off. So it was tough.
All right, let me change our emphasis here quite a bit. Cancer on Monday, dead on Tuesday, home for the weekend, finding hope in the storm. How did that book come about? People are going to be very interested to know.
Yeah, that story is based on my mom. It was a time in my life that was, tragic, and yet the most amazing thing that's probably ever happened. We have not lived in the area for 15 years, and my husband happened to get a job in the Poconos. And I got a call. We'd been there, I think we'd only been there a couple months. And my mom called me on a Monday and said, I've been diagnosed with breast cancer, which we knew was possible, but she had a biopsy. And the next morning, it was less than 24 hours later, I got a call that she had collapsed. And they basically thought she was gonna die. Her heart, she had extra beats in her heart, and she had a 1 in a million chance of 2 of them hitting at the same time, and she basically died instantly. And her husband happened to hear her call, and he did CPR, and he got her, to stay alive until they got to the hospital. And it was just a phenomenal story, the way it happened, because as I'm driving 2 hours from the Poconos, I'm thinking she's gone. That's it. I just got back to the area. and I'm not gonna see her anymore. And so the book came about because having something like that happen, getting cancer on Monday, and basically, we had made a plan. This is how you're going to treat this cancer. We got this. This is no problem. And then it's like, she's not even going to get to try, and our family, we're going to beat it. She's not going to let this, something like cancer, slow her down. And so when it looked like, that Tuesday, we just basically prepared to lose her, and 4 days later, she walks out of the hospital perfectly healthy and beats her cancer 4 months later. And I remember telling her what happened was she had no idea what happened, that, she was in a coma for 12 hours and she woke up. She just knows she was making her husband's lunch for the day. That was it, And I said, listen, I'm going to make you a journal because some really cool stuff happened, in the midst of your 12 hours of not knowing what was going on. And then I didn't do that for a couple months. Life kind of had a 2-year-old at the time, and life kind of took hold. And I finally, one night, just felt this urge, and I just felt God saying, like, you've got to do this. There are people that need to hear this story because it is phenomenal. It is something that you wouldn't believe unless you lived through it. And so that's what I did. When my two-year-old went down for a nap, I wrote. I literally went down to my computer and I wrote the, and I started every chapter with the, and not just thinking about something that happened. And it took me 2 weeks. I just wrote the whole book all in one sitting, basically. So it was crazy. Never planned to do it. I do love to write, but writing with a 2-year-old at home is not something that, you go, hey, this sounds like a great idea. But I'm glad I did, because I think that there have been a lot of people, cancer is just everywhere. And so people do need hope, and people need to know that your life isn't perfect. We see everybody's lives on social media now, and we always get the perfect version, and so people don't know, oh, well, what's really happening? What did happen? What did you have to do to get to the happy ending that we kind of see now, so that's why I wrote it.
Well, I must say, I have a copy of your book, of course, and it's a great book. I loved reading it. If somebody wants to get a copy, is it available online?
It is on Amazon. I think there's only a few copies left. My publisher actually, he got out of the business. And so if they do want a copy, my mom has a lot of copies. I have a lot of copies. So if they get a hold of me or her, we're not even charging for them anymore. I just want people to be blessed by the story, So, and we have a couple hundred extra copies. And so if my mom sees someone who she thinks needs some hope, she goes, here's some. She keeps them in her trunk. So,
as I said, it's a great read. Yeah. I really loved reading it. And
that's a
good segue to your family life right now. Your husband, you mentioned your children. How many do you have? And tell us a little bit about them.
Yep. So my husband's name is Charles. We actually have been together. It is our 19th anniversary this year. Yes, 19th. Our story is kind of in the book because it's pretty amazing too. We met at a dude ranch in Colorado. I was going to go for the summer, planned on trying to play basketball in Europe. Next thing you know, we're engaged after 10 weeks, and we've been together 19 years now. So that's just an amazing story. And then I have 2 children. Canyon is 14 and Maverick is 6. So they're fun. Boy, I think I was meant to be a boy mom. That's for sure.
But that's one thing that really keeps you going.
Yes.
It's great.
Yes.
So what kinds of hopes and dreams do you have for the future, Trish?
For myself?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, so, I have a teaching degree, and I thought that I would teach. And I can tell you that life changes pretty quickly. And so I've been at home most of the time with my kids, and I feel like that's the greatest job that there is, really, and it's getting exciting now to watch Canyon, almost be in high school and try to teach him things about sports. But beyond that, I do like to help people. My mom she was healed with natural supplements that I have met a stranger about 6 years ago and told me about. And so that's what I do at home also, along with my kids. I work from home and help people, particularly I do try to help people with cancer, because without that, I don't know if my mom would be here. So And that's what I do in my, my spare time around my kids is to help people. I love that. I thought that I'd be in a classroom with children, but we've moved around so much that that's just really hasn't been possible. So, when you do something that's from home, we saw firsthand that there's nothing more important than your health. You can have a great family life, everything you want, live in the area, the job, but as soon as your health goes, it changes everything. And so that made me passionate about that. And that's another reason, I'm thankful that people have read my book, because I have talked to a lot of people who've gotten on those supplements because of my book, that I've seen them be healed. So there's nothing more amazing than watching someone get their health back. So that's pretty much where I am.
It's in the book how many moves you made. You're living in Arkansas now. How did you get?
I like it. I like it. It's funny. There's a song out now. I don't know who it's by, but it talks about being happy anywhere you are. And that's kind of my husband and I. I was someone that thought I might live in Milton my whole life. I loved it. I loved the area. I loved my family. And then I met him, and I think this is our. I think we've counted. I think we've lived in 12 states. I'm not sure how many it is, but we were living in Utah, and we did want to get a little bit closer to the family. So we cut the country in half a little bit. We haven't tried the South much yet. So we're in Arkansas. It reminds me a lot of Pennsylvania. So I do love that. We're nature people. So as long as we get somewhere where we can get outside and we can hike and we can, it's a passion for us to show that to our kids, because that's how we met. We met in Colorado, and we've lived in Montana, and that's who we are. So if we can show our children a love of nature, then we think we're doing all right.
Trish, I want to thank you so much for being here on Catching Up with Carl. It's been a lot of fun talking to you.
Yes, thank you.
CV8. And for everybody here, this has been Trish Pawling King. Thank you, and we'll see you next time.